Hi, good morning. It's Wayne Marr from Matter of Action. We want to talk about nullification, and we have this morning Robert Owen, and Robert's going to be speaking about nullification, military tactics applied legislation. Active. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Wayne. How are you?
Okay, listen, this is a hot topic. Nullification is a very confusing topic for people, and it's an opportunity to really kind of set the record straight, but it's very powerful for state legislators. And I just wanted you to kind of tee up a little bit about the talk that you're offering, but more a little bit about what nullification is, and then how to really make it impactful for members as an action item out in their respective areas. So good morning, and let's talk a little bit about your talk and about how you make this happen.
Thanks, Wayne. So, what's exciting about nullification is that so many people are looking at the news today and they're seeing things. And I'll just use an example of the Second Amendment for purposes of putting some structure to our talk. They're looking at things like the Biden administration and what they're doing to the Second Amendment, and they're terrified.
Yeah.
And they're looking at Congress and they're seeing that there's really no hope there. So nullification is wonderful because at the state level, where many Americans can actually do something to defend their constitutional rights, there is an option, there is a way. So 7 states already have passed nullification laws that nullify all federal firearms laws in their state. And imagine how awesome that would be if that was the case in your state. In Tennessee, they did this 10 years ago. In Tennessee, they don't care what the Biden administration does. Doesn't matter what the Senate and the House and Nancy Pelosi says about guns, because in the state of Tennessee, nothing they do applies. This is what we've got to do, is to engage our citizenry in using this tactic to start defending our constitutional rights. The Second Amendment's a great place to start, right, but there's lots of other ways that we go about it. So our talk about using nullification and military tactics to get it involved is a study of how we can use sort of a realpolitik view of your state house, how your committee system works, how we can craft these bills, get them introduced, pushed all the way through the committee system, pushed all the way and enacted into law, and how you, as an ordinary citizen, can be at the cutting edge of making that happen in your state.
So what kind of tools, then, an ordinary member of the Bird Society or a citizen, what do they need to do in front of a state legislature? I know that you and I spoke about this before in Ohio and Michigan, for example. What are some of the things that you had to do with members? What was the process to empower our members to actually do that?
Well, here's the exciting part, Wayne. The answer is it's very in-depth and complex what we do to do it at a high level. Yeah. But the good news is that all the tools are ready for the members and are available to them. All they got to do is ask. So, for example, if we're trying to push a nullification bill through, first of all, we've got to educate our state representatives about the doctrine of nullification, that this is something that's a very American legal doctrine. Not only is it, the opponents will try to say it's not constitutional or it's outside the Constitution. Well, it's very much inside the Constitution. It's embedded in Article 6 as a mandate, really, to state representatives to uphold the Constitution. But also, we're going to look at the 9th and the 10th Amendments as well. And here we see clear constitutional authority for using this doctrine of nullification, which is really just a process by which the states are saying, hey, federal government, you have limited and defined and enumerated powers. And when you step outside of those powers, it is the right for us, the state, to say, no, you can't do that. It's no different than a parent telling a child that's doing something wrong, hey, you can't do that.
Got it.
Well, that's what we have to understand is the reality here. And it's our way to push back and fight back, but using legal, historical, principled means to do it. And that's the exciting part. Now, the practice of this is going to require some dedication, and it's going to require some tools. So what members need to understand is that the educational tools are already developed. We've got videos, podcasts, written materials, even really brilliantly done trifolds that are inexpensive and easy to obtain in quantity, right, so that not only can you go and you can educate your state representative And in the September bulletin, there's a wonderful article I wrote about how a member engages with his state rep and how to look at engaging with state reps, right? So you can build those relationships, but then you've got to have the right materials and you have to understand who you're talking to. Now, again, this is a little bit of a complex process, and that's why this speech is important, because we will teach you how to do your research beforehand so that when you're going and you're meeting with your state rep, you know who their donors are, you know their past votes, you know where they stand in the caucus, that you have advanced intelligence information. Because when you're so empowered, it's amazing the things that you can do.
Yeah, what
And
that's saying
we
is,
want our members to
and
be.
what was that? We do have a state representative scorecard now, as well as a congressional one, which is really important. But I wanted to ask one thing, though, because it does come up, is that the term nullification is nowhere written as a word in the Constitution. So how do we unwind that as people listen to this? Because it doesn't appear the word nullification.
Well, the terminology of what we call it, or interposition, was sometimes used by our founding fathers. Right. It's not spelled out with that, terminology expressly. But part of it is because we're going to see a function of it in Article 6, but then also in the 9th and 10th Amendments, right? And so they weren't using those amendments to spell out mechanisms by which the First Amendment is to be protected. No, what they were doing is they were saying, in the Constitution, hey, your right to free speech shall not be abridged. So a mechanism by which you might protect your First Amendment rights would be to file like a writ of mandamus or a writ of habeas corpus. Right. Well, that's not spelled out in the First Amendment, but it is something that you do because the First Amendment exists.
So it's implied.
Well, nullification's the same way. The 9th and 10th Amendment, state that in the event the government's exceeding their enumerated powers, states have the right to step in and say, no, you can't do this. This was part of the convention, the debate at the convention, and it was also a significant part of the ratification debates and understood as such. And further, the first use of nullification actually took place in 1798 and 1799 when Thomas Jefferson and James Madison is known as the father of the Constitution, when they actually wrote the first nullification bills themselves, what were known as the Kentucky resolutions and the Virginia resolutions.
Okay. So if you're talking to a state legislator, I don't know where their knowledge base is. It depends on who they are, of course. But you said we have great tools for members to really understand how to begin that conversation with state legislators. Because this may be a foreign topic for them, knowing they have the powers to do this, right?
Well, absolutely. The other thing is it also depends on where you are in the country. So, for example, if I'm talking about nullification in Michigan, I'm going to bring up the fugitive slave laws and the fact that here nullification was used to reject fugitive slave laws and sort of the scourge of slavery, and that this was an important thing that was done to protect Black people. Well, that resonates very well in Michigan. Now, if I'm in South Carolina, I'm going to use a different tactical set, right? That's not really the one that I'm going to bring up because it's not going to be as well understood there. In that case, there's other ways that we can bring it up. So it's careful how you use communication to educate on these important tools. And that's why understanding the military tactics of how to get your message across and how to get this agenda proceeded becomes very important. Because knowing your battlefield, man, that's one of those important things.
Well, thank you. So this is going to be a really good introduction to your talk, Nullification Military Tactics Applied to a Legislative Action. Thank you. Look forward to it. And you can file out these tools on jbs.org, as you just mentioned. Robert, thank you. I look forward to hearing more about this and also other members calling you on the phone or contact you to actually give your speech in the locale. Thanks so much. Have a great day.